Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to be discussing blended learning, specifically teaching creative writing in the partially virtual classroom. So thank you for attending this evening. And give me a little smiley face if you can hear me adequately. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. So before we begin, we're going to do a little quality check to make sure our technology is working properly. So I would ask that to take the next few minutes to kind of remove distractions, take a breath, and let your day go. Think about just focusing for the next few minutes. And we're going to do a couple of little quick technology diagnostics. I want to make sure that you see in your upper right-hand corner that the word recording is showing. Can you give me a smiley face if you see the word recording up on the top right? Wonderful, thank you. And can you see the words quality check at the top of the main part of the screen? Give me another smiley face if you can see that. Okay, fabulous. So make sure you have your phone on vibrate or put away and your door shut. Everybody's just going to let you relax for the next few minutes and learn a little bit about this topic. Okay. So also making sure we can hear audio correctly, and you're feeling good about that. Everyone did their audio setup. And do you now see a new slide? It should say Technology Diagnostics at the top of the screen now. Can you give me a smiley face if you see Technology Diagnostics? Great. Okay. So welcome. This is our second session for this course, and today's Saturday, February 7th, 2015. We hope to discuss this evening some things about blended learning, the future of online learning, specifically in higher education, and specifically applying it to creative writing instruction in the higher ed classroom. So I want to welcome our live students, welcome our virtual students who may be watching this recording, and we'll get started specifically with what we're going to go over tonight. So our learning objectives, we're going to be able, by the end of this session, we'll be able to describe faculty and technology administrators' feelings about online instruction. We'll be able to create a sense of community in a creative writing class taught in either online or blended format. And we'll be able to explain the benefits of a blended course delivery format. Okay, so as we begin, I want to first start out with a little poll. The fourth icon over underneath my name should be a little letter A, so you'll use that to respond to this poll. So I'm going to pose the question, who do you think more favorably looks at online learning? Is it A, which would be faculty members, instructors, or B, technology administrators in higher education? So just go ahead and vote what you think. Who thinks more favorably about online learning? Faculty or technology administrators? Okay, everybody says B, and let's have a look at the poll. Yes, so we have 100% of responders say B, and that is correct. Technology administrators think much more positively about online instruction. So the data for that, according to a report done just last year by Inside Higher Education, only 9% of faculty surveyed think that online instruction can affect the same results in student learning as courses delivered via traditional in-person means. But people in positions related to technology administration who think that online instruction is at least as good as in-person instruction when it comes to achieving the same learning outcomes. 36% of technology administrators believe that it's effective. So in similar metrics surveyed on this matter, technology administrators were more likely to have favorable opinions about it than faculty. So this is kind of maybe pretty obvious or maybe a little bit puzzling. One possible reason for this disparity could stem from individual experience. So in our text chat, can you just say yes or no if you've ever taken an online course before? Okay, so both of you have taken an online course before. Does either one of you want to hop on your mic and tell us a little bit about one course that you've taken online?
I guess I'll hop on.
Okay, go ahead.
I am in a writing positive fiction program, and we take a lot of reading courses online. And am I supposed to tell you whether I think favorably of it?
Yeah. Do you like it? Do you like taking online courses?
I don't that much. I don't think the discussion gets as in-depth as it can in person when everyone's in the same room.
Okay. That's great. So maybe we'll illuminate something for you tonight that might pinpoint what it is about those courses that may be not as effective as it could be. Tom, do you want to hop in too? Is there a course that you've taken online?
Yes, I took an introduction to technical writing course a few years ago. That was very interesting. It was a nice introduction to the course. I thought that taking it online was good because I could build my own schedule and pace with it, and learn at my own discretion, and not in a classroom environment.
Okay, great. So your experience with the online course was actually positive then?
Yes.
Okay, that's actually wonderful. Thank you both for responding. So as we go through some of the ways in which online courses can be delivered more effectively and talk to you about blended courses, I think maybe some of this will illuminate what your instructors have each been doing either well or could do a little bit better. Okay, so let's move forward. Okay, so one of the main differences could also be individual experience. More technology administrators have taken online courses themselves, which could, in some cases, lend them to be thinking a little bit more positively about them. So the data from this same Insight Higher Ed survey found that 53% of technology professionals have taken an online course as a student versus only 32% of folks who then end up in the faculty. Of the faculty who do teach online, have taught online, and do feel a little bit more positive about it, 49% of those took online courses when they themselves were students, as opposed to only 23% of the faculty who've never taught online. So maybe is this simply unfamiliarity and fear of the unknown that's led to this phenomenon? Could blended learning be an answer? Because if they haven't taken specifically a blended learning course, maybe these folks aren't quite clear on how e-learning could be used in a different way. So why don't you give me a smiley face or a frowny face whether or not you know what blended learning is. So smiley face if you know what it is, frowny face if you don't. Okay, so you're both familiar with blended learning, but let me just give a little bit of a definition too. This would be courses where there's partial face-to-face and partial online. Okay, so how does this apply to creative writing? Basically, we want to make sure that we're addressing the community of inquiry framework. And the community of inquiry is a framework that addresses 3 different dimensions of the educational experience: social presence, cognitive presence, and teaching presence. And this is defined in the e-learning in the 21st century textbook, but just to give a little review of this, social presence would be the dimension where we're engaging with each other as students in a positive way and creating a sense of community, so that's the social presence. The cognitive presence is making sure that the learning outcomes are being addressed and that everyone's feeling like they're obtaining the material correctly. And then the teaching presence is making sure that the instructor is a presence in the class as a facilitator, as a leader, and is guiding the course forward. So in creative writing instruction, since we're assessing and assisting with student writing, rather than working in a discipline with an obvious discussion-based model, it might seem obvious that transferring some elements of the work to an online format would work very well. We're assessing something that's written in an online format, obviously has mostly a written component. But part of assessing student writing is also having students evaluate each other's work and feeling safe being evaluated by each other and the instructor. So the component that we want to address within the community of inquiry framework would be predominantly the social presence area. We want to build a sense of community. We want to make sure everyone feels safe. Positive social presence can set a climate of group support and provide supporting discourse that informs the experience as being helpful, caring, and safe. So you're asking each other to express yourselves artistically and experiment in a creative field. You know, our egos might be fragile. It could be seen as impersonal and unhelpful to have students be evaluated by people who are just words on a screen. Okay, if we don't know who the instructor is, if we don't know who our fellow students are their critiques going to come off more or less harshly if delivered in person or online? So, if we're kind of nervous about whether this social presence area is really being addressed in an online course, what are some ways these fears could be addressed? Does anybody want to get either on the text chat or hop on the mic and just throw out an idea? What's one way that some of these social presence fears could be put to rest? In fact, Tom, in your online class that you took, did you feel a strong sense of social presence with your fellow students?
No, I really didn't. Not having that connection to the other people in the class or even the instructor was a detriment to the class. So not having any sort of really even face-to-face contact. We didn't have anything like this in the class. It was really just forum communications, and that wasn't even mandatory. So yeah, not having, there really wasn't a social presence in that class, so that did make it a little distant.
Okay, great. And Carrie, you were mentioning that the online format isn't always working for you. Do you think maybe that's because in that program, is there a lack of social presence in the online courses?
No, I think the social presence is okay. I think all of the ones I've been in have had an introductory thread, and it's helpful when they set it up a week or a couple of days before class actually starts. It gives us some time to get to know each other, and we respond to each other's introductions with questions, and oh, that's cool, you did that. Yeah, so I don't think that was the problem in those classes for me.
Okay, great. So, but you're saying that in your classes there's an introductory thread. So the introductory thread is sort of almost providing a simulation of like icebreakers that would happen in an in-person course. So that's maybe one way we can increase the social presence. Some other things too to make maybe subgroups, have specific people work together, encouraging people to get connected on social media. But we'll see some other ways of how we can actually bring that into the blended learning environment and help that social presence get increased. Okay, so how can we address those fears about limited social presence? I think we've kind of covered that a little bit. Thinking about discussion threads, thinking about introductory discussion threads, but the blended format provides an obvious place where those icebreakers and that in-person connectivity can actually happen. Okay, so when we think about the future of e-learning, looking maybe at this blended model, and this image right here that we see on the screen right here, this is a flipped classroom. Has anyone had experience with a flipped classroom? Maybe give me a frowny face or a smiley face if you had experience with a flipped classroom before. Okay, so a flipped classroom, this is a pretty new sort of environment. These folks are kind of in what they call little learning pods, and they're watching some video. Everybody's got a laptop here. A flipped classroom is one that's sort of specifically designed for a hybrid e-learning, but taking place actually in the class. A more blended model might also involve maybe not meeting as many days of the week in person, but then having a lot more online components to the course. And as more and more students grow up in a fully digital world, failure to use some online blended course delivery systems in higher ed will be increasingly seen as a little bit antiquated, a little bit irrelevant to today's world. It would be almost like, you know, students being expected to use typewriters these days. And in the textbook that we're using for this course, E-Learning in the 21st Century, the author discusses that educational technologies can be used to improve the effectiveness of the transaction, especially when using blended learning. We're going to discuss a little bit just hypotheses about verbal or written language and what we perceive maybe as the advantages or disadvantages. So we're going to make a little whiteboard here. We're going to say verbal language over here, and we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages, and we're going to say written language over here, advantages and disadvantages. So Carrie, I'm going to assign you to written language, and Tom, I'm going to assign you to verbal language. And there's no specifically right or wrong answer here. I'm just curious what the perceived positives and negatives of both kinds of discourse are. So there's a floating toolbar just to the right of all of our names, and the tool with the little letter A is the text function. So if you each want to grab that and just brainstorm a couple of things on your side of the whiteboard, and we'll take just a moment for that. So what do you think verbal language is especially good at or not so good at, and what do you think written language is especially good at and not so good at? Okay, so we're seeing written language can help students get clearer thoughts, so we've got an obvious disadvantage or advantage. Yes?
Sorry, are we talking specifically in online classes?
No, in any realm of life, honestly.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and then verbal is building community and personal. We've got some great advantages. Do you see any disadvantages with either one?
So I just misspelled on precise.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
That would be ironic. Okay, all right, I think we've got some good examples of both the advantages and the disadvantages now. So the verbal language, the advantage would be the building community and personal connections. The disadvantage may be imprecise. With written language, the advantage, it helps you get clearer thoughts down on paper before presenting. It's easier for readers, classmates, to skip over some students' ideas. Absolutely, Carrie. I think that's one thing that I, too, have observed in online courses with when you're doing it in a forum posting style. You know, everyone kind of does what you're supposed to get done, and then it's a little bit too easy to not read everyone's comments if time doesn't permit. Okay, so great. So still thinking about these things. For written language, I think we've pretty well established the advantage is because of being able to complete a task over a longer period of time, to think about what you're going to say, to be able to revise it a little bit. And so what you're presenting is really something you've fully thought through. But thinking about this, when students are able to use both written and verbal language, if you're using both an in-person element and an online element in a class, studies actually support what we're kind of doing here, that the ability to reflect and think critically is increased. Students feel safe together by meeting in person, and they're similarly able to take longer time reflecting and performing their tasks using the revision and the asynchronous convenience of online activities. So that is one other thing, that convenience factor. You can hop on there when you have the time, but you're not having to be there at a specific time necessarily. But, you know, this particular forum is another way that a fully online class can build community by having synchronous, a simulated version of an in-person class. Okay, so creative writing instruction that does have some obvious benefits. And when we think about the future of e-learning, what do creative writing faculty need to know? So we've got the quintessential writing workshop there on the left, and then we've got the online forum posting, the one student in their dorm room with their computer there. The idea is that we want to be able to have faculty feel comfortable, you know, going back and forth. You know, you've got a class that has elements of each in there, and each one has their advantages and disadvantages. The problem mentioned earlier of having to be evaluated by people who are strangers is removed when you allow for an in-person element that's then carried over into the online environment. So perhaps that's something that, Tom, in your class, if there had been an in-person element that you then take back to the forum posts, people might have been more inclined to post, perhaps. So the future directions that higher ed must take to improve the quality and success of online learning. Maybe think of one way that faculty might be persuaded to implement a little bit of a blended class. And then just think of something, maybe type it in the text chat, but then don't post it yet. Don't hit enter. Just give it one moment, and we'll all hit enter at once and think of one way. How can we turn those 9% into a much larger number? Where do we need to get that buy-in from? Okay, let's go ahead and just hit enter, everybody. I think we all have some answer written down. Oh, great. Okay, we've got a couple different answers here. So the thing I was bringing up is getting training from the technology administrators, so those folks who already have the buy-in, to actually then train the folks who don't yet, maybe through educating them on the advantages to the student. Wonderful. Okay. And more flexibility with time constraints. So, Tom, can you maybe hop on the mic and explain that one a little bit?
Well, just that the traditional time constraints of the classroom wouldn't be there.
Oh, right. Okay.
They could, you know, have meetings at other times.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So getting that important training, being told these things, that's kind of the key. Everything that each of us mentioned, the thing they have in common is that the faculty need to know these things, basically. So in creative writing instruction, faculty need to be trained not only in how to use things like the course management system, but how to use elements like online peer evaluation, discussion boards, strategies for integrating online and in-person feelings of community, familiarity among students so that they feel comfortable with who is critiquing them on their artistic output. Okay, so let's kind of sum up what we've done tonight. What we should all feel pretty good about is the idea that faculty and technology administrators differ in their feelings about online instruction, and maybe that can be used to faculty's advantage then to have those tech administrators then teach the faculty what they need to know about blended and online learning. Also, we can create a sense of community in a creative writing class by using a blended delivery, and that blended course delivery allows for both in-person community building and critical exploration via written communication. Okay, so if you want to learn a little bit more about any of this, again, our main course textbook by Garrison, and then the survey of faculty views on technology from Inside Higher Ed, that is available on the Inside Higher Ed website. Okay, so any questions? I might have a question for you all, whether or not you've got questions for me, but do you feel like with some of this implementation, the online classes you've had before might be enhanced? And maybe in one way it could be enhanced a little bit.
Yeah, even though my experience was generally positive, I think more of a blended learning experience would have been better for me. Probably would have been more reinforcement with the learning, having the community of the other students would have helped me out, I think. So yes.
Okay, wonderful. And what about you, Carrie? Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Most of my problems with the online classes was I felt like there were a lot of individual discussions happening versus one bigger one. And I think with blended learning, that could very, very easily turn into more in-depth discussions.
Great. Well, thank you guys so much. Any other questions for me? No. If you're all good, give me a smiley face. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great evening.